Here we go again. Today we're back for another mock draft on the channel. Today we are doing a post Super Bowl mock draft. Now we had some interesting news today with Trinidad Chambliss granted his 6th year of eligibility, potentially to stay at Ole Miss. I've talked about how Nussmeier really could move up the board, and this would even help him even more. He could become a late first rounder, you never know, or a middle second rounder, which is probably what he'll go regardless, the mid second round. But let's get it right into it with number one. This one's the easiest one. They just hired Clint Kubiak. I know there's been some talk, I've seen some dumbass Dov Cliveman tweets. Fucking hate that guy. One. But unrelated, Mendoza is a pick. They're not going to tank another year. Mark Davis, whatever Davis it is, the fucking bowl cut guy, wants to win now. This is the guy to do it. This guy's won. This guy dominated this past year at Indiana. He won every game. And he's a player that got them there. At the end of the day, when you needed big plays, he was a guy to do it. He might not be a top 3 quarterback in his career, in the league, but he could put down some really good seasons, and I think he'll be right around a top 10, top 5 quarterback for most of his career. Hopefully. I really like the guy, even if he is going to Vegas, unfortunately. Now, at pick 2, I still don't know what's going to happen here. I'm going to stick with Arvell Reese. It's a tough one, just because, again, you don't know what the Jets are going to do. Obviously, free agency's coming up in the next couple of weeks. We'll kind of get a better idea just kind of what the Jets and a couple of these other teams are going to want to do. And I think Arvell Reese is a good pick here. I think he is probably the second best player in the class, especially for them. Now, at pick 3, I'm going to go right back to it with what I've been doing, which is Mowaga and Fano. Now, today I'm going to go with Mowaga ahead of him. I think it's pretty interchangeable on the two. Mowaga had obviously had the playoffs, which helped elevate his stock, and Fano was, I believe, the best offensive tackle in college football on the awards. Now, at pick 4 with the Tennessee Titans, could go a couple ways. I've talked about this already. Ruben Bain, obviously you got the receivers with Tate, Lemon, and Tyson. Now, Tyson's dropping down the PFF boards a little bit. He's at 14. But I think the pick here with you also, taking Robert Saleh as the head coach and then Brian Daboll as the OC, I think, two things. The first two things you go after, right? Right now, this team needs an edge rusher. Now, this team really hasn't had one. I mean, Harold Landry's decent. Obviously, they cut him. Injury prone. We saw that a little bit with the Pats at the end of this year, too. Receiver, not great. Ian Manor, DK, Calvin Ridley. I like DK and Io Manor, but I don't think they have a 1 in either of those guys. And I think any of these receivers would be cool, but I just don't think they're going to pass up on a prospect like Ruben Bain. With Saleh, I think he could be absolutely disgusting, and I think it just makes so much sense here. Now, with the Giants, I've had Caleb Downs a lot here. Now, the other big one here for me to think about would be Spencer Fano, but I'm inclined to continue with Downs here, as I really do think he is probably a top 3 prospect in this class. And I just think he'd be a perfect fit for this Giants team, who kind of just needs that defensive back, that leader. Guy can play all over the field. Very similar prospect to Kyle Hamilton, and I think he'll be, there's no doubt he's going to be a baller. He's going to be a Pro Bowl, All-Pro caliber guy. I think he's one of the most sure things in this draft. Now, at pick 6, I've seen some talk about them taking edge rusher. I don't see it. This team does not need defense. Carnell Tate, I think, is probably maybe the most likely pick here, but I do think Spencer Fano is probably the pick. Obviously, you bring in Todd Monken as your head coach. He was the OC for the Ravens. He gave Lamar Jackson probably his best 2 years of his career. Now, I like this hire. But this offense needs some help, and it needs help all over the place. I think offensive tackle is the first thing to focus on. I do think this is a very good offensive tackle class and a receiver class. I just don't think Tate's a better prospect than Fano in this scenario. And yeah, that's what I'm just gonna do here at pick 6 and now pick 7 with the Washington Commanders. No doubt about it. David Bailey's a home run pick at pick 7. He's not Bane or Brees, but he's pretty damn close, and he's a very good prospect, and that's kind of just the guy the Commanders need. Now, the most like obviously Chase Young was drafted to be really good, but I'm trying to think the best edge rusher they might have had. Last one, Montez Sweat, Ryan Kerrigan, right? Like it's been rough. Like this year, Von Miller was one of their best edge rushers, which not a good sign at all. So yeah, going on to pick 8 here with New Orleans Saints. I do really think Love could be the play. Tate, I just think he's very like Olave. I think Lemon still is my pick here at 8. I just feel like he's such a fun and a really good fit with New Orleans, with Kellen Moore, Tyler Shuck, Olave is the one. I think Lemon is arguably the best receiver in the draft. I really do think he could go top 10. I think the Chiefs are another team that could totally take him. Even Washington, they have a huge need at receiver. They could take him. Obviously, David Blau, he talked about this today, where he says we got to go out there and get Terry McLaurin 10 targets a game at least, which you'd like to see. But they're pretty much lacking around him. Jalen Lane, Luke McCaffrey, Debo's a free agent. Who knows what the rest of that team's going to look like? And with pick 9, I'm going to stick with the guy I've said for months. This is just, it's unfortunate because it's obviously the Chiefs, but I think Jeremiah Love is perfect. They just hired DeMarco Murray as their running back coach, and I think this just settles it. Jeremiah Love is the pick there. Unless the only reason they wouldn't take Love is if they signed Kenneth Walker or Breece Hall in free agency, but they don't have money. I believe they're second to last or last in cap space. So they'd be a little bit screwed. I would argue that. Now at pick number 10, I'm gonna go with one of these 3 guys: Sonny Styles, Mansour Delane, Jermod McCoy. I think Sonny Styles is the pick. It's weird taking a linebacker top 10, like I said last week too. He's just so good, and he's so mobile. He played safety in high school. He played linebacker at Ohio State. He was very, very good. He's just like such a sure thing, just similar to Caleb Downs, where I'm very sure he's going to be a nasty prospect. And that's kind of the guy the Bengals need on that defense. They don't really have a linebacker. Obviously, they traded Logan Wilson. They cut Jermaine Pratt. These are 2 guys that played a lot of snaps the last 5-6 years at those 2 positions, and I think Sonny Styles would be a perfect guy. Now, could they go Delane or McCoy? Yes. I think their corners are a little bit better than their linebacker core. And the linebacker core, obviously you have Nakobe Dean, you have Devin Lloyd as 2 of the biggest free agents at linebacker, but I don't think either one gives you what Sonny Styles does, and I think he'd be perfect. Now at pick 11, we're here with about 4 different players. I'm going to rule out Peter Woods. It's either one of these 2 corners or one of the 2 receivers. Now, I do really like Tate in this situation. For Miami, obviously, we don't know what their quarterback situation is going to look like. Jeff Hafley is the head coach. I'm going to guess they're going to go a corner, and I think corner is a huge need, as we saw all season. Their cornerback position kind of just struggled. Obviously, Rasul Douglas, I think, was one of their best corners. I mean, Jalen Ramsey got traded. Xavier Howard's obviously a bit out of town. They haven't had a lot of success with some of these first-round corners. Noah Igabagane. That is butchered completely. I'm so sorry, bro. But I think Mansour Delane is a very good prospect. They need a more sure thing. I do really like Jermod McCoy. Obviously, he was the best college football corner in 2024. But going off, a guy who's healthy, I think you lean that way most of the time. Now, I do think McCoy probably just goes the pick right after to the Dallas Cowboys, who probably have the biggest corner need in all of college, all of football. I don't know why I said college football, but this team, you had rookie corners, you had Deron Bland, who was terrible. Diggs, who got cut and was horrible. It's a huge need. And again, at pick 13, we have another team who needs a corner. But not going to be reaching on Terrell in this one. I do think Carnell Tate, Jordan Tyson, definitely in play here. Terrell, I mean, it's not, when you start scrolling down here, you're starting to think maybe this isn't a crazy shout to take him there, and I think that's what I'm going to do here. This is probably the biggest need on this team besides offensive tackle. The only thing is you don't really have a guy who you're going to be comfortable taking at 13 now that Mowaga and Fano are off the board. Uh, if you could trade up, that would be ideal. Could you go receiver? I really do think receiver isn't totally in play here. Um, that's what I might end up doing. I think they're just going to, obviously Devontae Adams 32, Puka, prime of his career. But going forward, Jordan Whittington, Xavier Smith or Xavier Smith. What do you really have there? And that's the real problem here that you're going to run into. And I think, honestly, I think I've just talked myself into taking Carnell Tate. I think he's just a very good prospect. He'd be a very good wide receiver too. Plays on the outside, very similar to Chris Olave. And he's a very just good prospect. I don't think he could be like top 5, maybe top 10, but I don't think he could be the best receiver in the league. I think Makai Lemon has more upside than he does. Jordan Tyson probably has more upside than he does. But Tyson obviously has his flaws. But do I think he could go here at 14? Unknown. I'm going to go Peter Woods, though, because I do really think defensive line would be awesome. I know there's talk about Madubuike being back, but I do think Peter Woods is a very good prospect. Last week I had him drop a little bit more, but I think he's just a very sure thing as well. He has very good college tape, very good college numbers. Just one of those guys who's going to be there, 8 to 10 years, and you're just going to be like, damn, we got that position filled for a long time. Now, he could be a Pro Bowl, All-Pro caliber guy, too. Very similar to, like, Gerald McCoy, Fletcher Cox, something like that. These guys who are just, defensive tackles don't get as much mentions, unless you're Aaron Donald. But very, very good player there. Now, at pick 15, I know I've had Sadiq a bunch here, but I'm gonna go away from that today because I do think they have a dire need at edge rusher too. Obviously, I believe they had Kalijah Cansey. That was one of the most recent picks in the first round. Could they go Caleb Banks as well? Obviously, Vita Vea is there, but I believe he might be on his last year or close to it. I'm going to go Cassius Howell because I think Cassius Howell is a very good prospect, and I just think he would be just a good player. Obviously, Bowles needs to win. The GM needs to win. I think Howell is a safer pick than Sadiq for them. Obviously, the offense is a little more built. You also have to target, guards and linemen. So could Ione be in play for the Bucks there? Totally. Now with the Jets at 16, this is curious because this team they're running a complete clown show. I mean, they just hired Frank Reich. I don't know what they're doing at all. I say this every time, but I think I'm gonna go with Caleb Banks here. Obviously, you just traded away Quinnen Williams in the regular season. You have a lot of picks in the next 2 years. I think Caleb Banks is a very good player. I think he'd just be a sure thing for this team and their defensive line. Obviously, they have a huge need at corner, as do this team picking 17th, the Detroit Lions, with 2 different needs here, actually. You could take Falk or Terrell. I'm going to go Terrell, though, because I think corner is a bigger need for this team at this moment. I don't think that's very arguable either. Now, with the Vikings, obviously the GM just got fired. So, it's more question marks of what they're going to do. I think Cade McDonald makes a ton of sense for them. And I think he'd just be a very good player in that middle. Obviously, Jonathan Allen had not a very good year. A couple other issues on this team as well. Obviously, the quarterback situation, the offensive line. Could you take Ione there for them too? Totally. Totally in play. Now, at pick 19, what's your goal for the Panthers this year? Now, could you, we look at their needs: receiver, defensive line, linebacker. Obviously, Tyson here would be insane to fall that far. Jets could have taken him. The Ravens could have taken him. But he does have a lot of question marks around him. I think 19 would be a very good spot for him. Now, if you look around at the board around here too, Lee Hunter definitely probably gets the most love at that spot. I don't, CJ Allen's a bit of a reach as well. You could totally take Ione. I mean, I think Tyson's just the player there because I think Coker is a 3, and I think T-Mac and Tyson would be awesome together. If you want Bryce to succeed, you take Tyson or you take Sadiq, I think. And I think that's what they might end up doing. I mean, this is the year where you get to see if Bryce is like can transform. I mean, he played well in the playoffs. He played well for some parts of the season, but we need to see more, and we need to challenge him with better players. And I think, Jordan Tyson could be one of those guys to do it. Like I said, I think he could be your wide receiver 1. I think you could have a similar situation. You know, Obviously you don't have the player quality of like someone like Chase, but T-Mac and Tyson would be very good, up there in receiver quality. Similar to maybe A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith as well. Now at pick 20 with the Cowboys, I think this pick's just self-explanatory. I think you need to take Keldrick Falk. You really do need an edge rusher with that trade with Micah Parsons, and I think he would be good to do so. Now at 21, I'm going to go to quarterback with Ty Simpson. I've had this a couple times. I just don't see them taking a receiver. Their need is receiver, but they also don't have a quarterback, and I think they're just going to reach and take Ty Simpson, similar to what they did with Kenny Pickett when Big Ben retired. Now at 22, no doubt about it. If this guy's available, the fucking Chargers take him. Ione is a very good prospect. He had a very good year at Penn State. He's the best guard in the class by a considerable amount. Yeah. Now at 23 with the Eagles, Kenyon Sadiq definitely in play. Denzel Boston definitely in play. I'm going to go with Sadiq here. I do really think he would be awesome on this team. He's a very athletic player. I don't see a lot of faults in his game. He's just not as good as a prospect, as last year with Loveland or Warren, but he's close-ish. And I think with the Eagles, Dallas Goedert's in pending free agent. He's had injury concerns the last 2-3 years. I think this is a perfect guy to replace him with, and obviously A.J. Brown could be on his way out too, so it could open the door for Boston or Conception too. And now at 24 with the Browns, obviously we don't know what their quarterback situation is going to look like. At 6, we took, offensive tackle. I think the pick here is just Denzel Boston. I think you got to take a receiver. This team doesn't have a wide receiver 1. I think Boston's a pretty good prospect. I think Casey Concepcion could be better, but who knows, right? We don't know. Maybe the Pro Day Combine will help us open up more ideas, right? Now at pick 25 with the Chicago Bears, if we look down at defensive line, which is a huge need, probably their biggest need, I'm going to go with Lee Hunter here. This is a team whose defensive linebacker core too, really did struggle this year, and I think this is just a perfect pick to grow that defense with Dennis Allen at the helm. I think Lee Hunter's a pretty good prospect. He's jumped up a lot. Obviously, last week, you didn't have him mocked in the first round on this site. Other sites, not really either. But he's a guy whose stock has grown. So, it's always interesting, you know what I mean? And that'll happen for a lot more players. Like I said before, I think Cisse could jump. I think Anthony Hill could jump. Omar Cooper's at 41 now, and he was at like 52 when I had the Bills take him last 2 weeks ago, I think. Now at 26, I'm going to go with Concepcion because I just think he's a perfect player for the Bills. I think that's the receiver they need desperately for Josh Allen. If you ever want to get him in a Super Bowl, not just only win, but in a Super Bowl, he's the guy to do it. With the Niners at 27, I think you just go T.J. Parker. It's not as exciting. I think he's a good prospect. You do need edge help. Bosa, obviously hurt. Michael Williams hurt. You had Keon White, he got shot. Prayers up to him. Hopefully he's recovering and doing well. Hopefully we hear more about that situation this week. And at 28 here, I'm going to go with Caden Proctor, I think. I just. Now I'm going to go Lomo. It's so hard, but I think Lomo is just a better prospect right now. And I think, at, just fits the team better. Obviously, you have. I believe they one good offensive lineman this year. It's a very weak offensive line, as you saw, in the Pats game and all regular season too. Just a very weak position. Now at 29, Proctor's definitely in play. He's very, he's a huge dude, but obviously he's going to have to move inside. Could the Pats be in play for him too? They're going to have to do the same thing probably with, well, Campbell, in my opinion. His arms are just too short, but Proctor's just too slow, I think, too, which Campbell is as well. But at 29, I'm going to go Monroe Freeling. I think this guy is just a very he's just a beast, and I really do think he'll just be a obviously with the Rams coaching staff, I think most players are going to succeed, and if they could turn around Emmanuel Forbes too, like I guess that's a place to go. With the Broncos at 30 though, this is a hard one. Now I really do think Anthony Hill makes more sense than C.J. Allen, and I would love the pick too. It's kind of just debating on what else is in here. Christian Miller definitely in play. I'm going to go with Anthony Hill, though. I really do think this is just an awesome spot for him. For a team who really does need linebackers, I think Trey Greenlaw's going to get cut. I think Drew Sanders is going to get cut. Probably both before the season. Just, you need a young guy at linebacker. I think our best linebacker, it was Danny Trevathan and fucking Brandon Marshall, not the receiver, the linebacker. Weird, we had two Brandon Marshalls on the same team, but the Pats here at 31. I'm gonna scroll a little bit here, and we're gonna go down to a guy who I really do think could jump a ton here as well. I don't even think he's listed unless I skipped him, which I probably did, knowing me. Offensive tackle though, Gannings Dunker. I really do think this guy will be a first-round pick. He just looks like a beast, bro. He's got the mustache, he's got the face, he's got the Quinn Miners type like build and stature. He's gonna be a freaking monster, and I would hope the Pats don't get him. But at 32 with the Seahawks, I think C.J. Allen does make sense. I think he is an awesome pick here, and I think they would just be very happy. Obviously, the Super Bowl winners. Crazy to think about that. The Seattle Seahawks win the Super Bowl 11 years later, right? Obviously, I know firsthand about getting beat by them, and we lost by a couple. I would argue. Wasn't pretty when we played them. It was the first Super Bowl of my lifetime that I watched my team playing, so wasn't the most pleasant. But at least they beat the Pats, so it's okay. Now this is all I have this week. We are getting closer and closer to the free agency and the post off season in general. And it'll open up a lot of different things. Obviously, all the coaches have been hired. Now, Kubiak is obviously the Raiders head coach. And the Seahawks will have to find an offensive coordinator. There's some quarterback openings that are going to be really interesting. Obviously, these, top three. You got the Browns. Derek Carr talks about him on retiring. We'll see about that. Miami. Obviously the Colts, too. Pittsburgh. The Colts probably going to go back with Daniel Jones, Malik Willis. I would like him in Miami. I do think Atlanta, another team I didn't mention here. Obviously, they traded their pick to the Rams. I think that's a very interesting spot for Malik Willis, with their talks of Kirk Cousins getting cut. But I will see y'all next week. Hopefully, we get some more NFL news. As always, it's been your boy BZ, and I'm out.